Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today I want to talk about how beneficial it can be for us to interact with other OCD sufferers. I want to talk about my own experience of this and how it helped me and how it could potentially help you in your OCD recovery journey. For me, one of the things that I struggled with a lot with my OCD was how alone it made me feel, because it made me feel like a weirdo. I was doubting whether or not I actually had OCD, and because of that I was afraid to reach out for OCD specific treatment. So I continued doing treatment that was no longer really progressing me. It wasn't until I finally had the courage to reach out for OCD specific treatment with OCD recovery that I was actually given the opportunity to join group calls as well as individual calls, and also join a WhatsApp group where we could support each other through our recovery journeys, support each other when we have difficult exposures, when we're having particularly bad days, and also be there to help each other break down our irrational beliefs, to work on changing them into something more rational in order to bring down our fear levels surrounding our particular thought or theme. When you start interacting with people who also suffer from OCD, you can start to notice similar thought patterns to your own, except when you're observing the other people and their relationship to their thoughts, feelings and themes, you can view it from a more outsider perspective, because you're not fused to what they're going through. You're fused to your own OCD. You're so intensely attuned with what's going on internally that it feels incredibly real to you. But you can observe it from somebody else when they talk about their own OCD themes, and to you it's like, I don't understand how they can think that about themselves, because it's quite obviously not the case. But with yourself you can't see that. But once you start to look at it from this kind of greater distance and you notice the similarities, you can start to question your own OCD and also notice how illogical some of it can be. Saying that though, what you are doing when you interact with other OCD sufferers is exposing yourself, though, in many different ways. You might find, I know I personally did, that you initially doubt your OCD even more because you see people with different themes and they're not exactly like yours. So your OCD is looking for somebody who's exactly like you, and there will be nobody who exists like that. There might be people who have had, you know, the same thoughts as you, but then they might have had other themes that they've gone through that you haven't, or vice versa. There's nobody that will have exactly the same journey as yours. So your OCD might pick at that. One of the things I did experience also was that I started to worry that I was doing the wrong thing by being in the group, because it wasn't fair. When I was doubting my own OCD, I would start to have thoughts that I was being unfair to the other people in the group, that I was somehow treating them badly and I was taking advantage of them just to make myself feel less alone or something, because I didn't deserve to be in a group because I didn't actually have OCD. And that's just something that you have to push through, because OCD will make you doubt everything, especially having OCD. But you just have to push through and expose yourself to those thoughts and continue challenging the irrationality of it. Something else that's quite common when you're interacting with other OCD sufferers is being fearful of catching other people's thoughts and themes, because you see that they're suffering with it and you start thinking, oh, that would be really horrible. I don't want to start thinking those thoughts and having those feelings. So then you might find yourself wanting to avoid hearing about them. But again, this is not a good idea. You don't want to be avoiding that. You want to be exposing yourself to these things, because the more you avoid and make a big deal out of it and tell yourself it would be terrible if you caught that theme, the more you're building it up in your mind. But what you're actually also doing is choosing to put yourself in a situation when you're exposed to all these other new ideas that other people are suffering with, because you're showing your brain then that you're not afraid to be scared. You're helping yourself to push through the barrier of the fear of the fear. So having the fear of OCD itself and how challenging it can be. Working in the WhatsApp group for me was very helpful in terms of exposing for me my fear of fear, because I could see other people obsessing about getting exposures right in the same way that I was. And then you start to realise it's because they're same as you, just so desperate to move on from this phase in their life and get the hell rid of OCD as quickly as possible in the same way you are. So it helps to expose some of the things that you need to work on, which is extremely helpful. One of the other things is that we all understand how difficult it is. We understand OCD, so we can cheer each other on, even if somebody does a very small exposure, which might seem like nothing to somebody who doesn't know about OCD. But we know how important that is, and we know how bloody hard it is for that person to get the courage to push through and do that exposure. So we can cheer each other on. We really understand what each other's going through. That was really, really important to me. It was like having a little family for a while that would cheer me on through these things that other people in my life, even people that knew me really well, just simply wouldn't be able to understand. They wouldn't understand why I'm putting myself through these difficult things. But I knew, and the people in my group knew, we had to do it. We have to, because OCD recovery is difficult. As well as the support that you can get from interacting with other OCD sufferers on their journey as well, there's also other benefits in terms of being able to educate each other as well. I might have read something that another person hasn't read that could be very, very useful to them, and vice versa. So information sharing and recommendations, as long as it doesn't go too overboard, in terms of it becoming a bit of a sort of a joint compulsive search for the easy route to recovery. You've got to watch out for that. As long as you're sensible about it, though, you can educate each other. Also, when you start working on your recovery and you're interacting with other people who might be further along in their recovery journey, it can give you a lot of extra hope and encouragement, and they can share their pearls of wisdom and advise on how to approach things. But also for those ones who are further along in their journey, helping somebody who's starting out a bit earlier, it further instills their learnings. So in terms of reading through the reading list, for example, with OCD recovery, and we're working through our irrational beliefs, sometimes you need to sharpen up on your rationality about certain things, and helping other people work on their irrational beliefs helps that. So it kind of further instills, when you're teaching to other people and explaining to other people, your subconscious is in the background then taking notes as well. So it's further embedding the information into your mind as well. So it's symbiotic, it's mutually beneficial for the person who's further along in their journey and the person who's starting out. You're both helping each other. It's not just the person who is further along in their journey that's able to help the other person. Also, when you witness other people going through their setbacks, you can help cheer them along. And then when you find yourself on a setback, having witnessed another person come out of a setback, you know that you can do the same thing. So again, it's that extra hope and it's that extra bit of motivation. It's so important. It's like if you're working out, you've got sometimes it can be helpful to have a workout buddy so that you can give each other a kick up the butt. If one of you's feeling less motivated on one day, the other person might be able to pick up the slack a little bit and give you a kick up the butt to get you going and sort of cheer you along a little bit. It can be very much like that with OCD as well. And I do think that when you get to a point when you're functioning a lot better and life does become a little bit easier, but OCD is still humming away there in the background, it can be very easy to get complacent on your journey then, because it's so much better than where you were. You almost feel like, okay, I can settle for this because I'm actually able to do stuff now, and I do get some moments of relief. But if you've got other people sort of rooting you along, and then getting further along than that, it can give you that extra spark of motivation that you need to keep pushing, even when you're less obsessed with your recovery. And it feels, it can feel very much like a chore sometimes, going over your rational beliefs. Seeing other people do it helps you to motivate yourself to do it. It's amazing the connections that you can feel with interacting with other OCD sufferers, because you have an understanding about each other that not everyone has. So even when you're further along in your recovery and you're out there spending more time kind of in your life than you are on your recovery, you still have these people that you have this amazing connection with still, that you can check in with, and you can sort of check in on each other and make sure that each other's not reassurance seeking. And particularly in the WhatsApp group, you can really see it. You get to the point where you start to notice more when people ask an innocent question, but actually it's reassurance seeking, and you can kind of say, actually, no, we're not going to answer that, that's reassurance seeking. By noticing that more from other people, you can start to spot it more in yourself, because it's funny how we can kid ourselves. Oh, no, this time I do actually need to check this. It's an innocent question. But really, if you stop and think about it, you know damn well, like, think about your motivation for asking that question. You know it's reassurance seeking, really. And you know what? If you're in doubt, just don't ask the question. But you get better at spotting that in yourself as well, which is very, very useful. It can be difficult when you're doing okay and somebody else might join the group who's really, really suffering. It can remind you of those really, really difficult days, which can be triggering, because if you're still working on trying not to get sucked into the fear of fear, and then you see somebody that's having a really difficult day and it reminds you of when you were in your worst stages of your OCD and your recovery, the start of your recovery journey, you might want to not look. You might want to turn away and avoid it. But again, facing it, and where you can, you can chip in with, some of the things that helped you. Don't be afraid of it. It's all part of the recovery journey to learn that, firstly, you can't go back to square one anyway, because you can't unlearn all of the things that you've learnt. The brain doesn't work like that. Secondly, if you do have a setback, you can come through it. You've come through it before, applying the same rules, and you can come out of it stronger again. So it's just exposing yourself to that. But even if you're not able to join a WhatsApp group or a group therapy or something, just as long as it's not in a compulsive research way, kind of being around the OCD community on social media, these kinds of YouTube channels can be really, really helpful, because it's still learning from other people's experiences. It doesn't cost anything to join. If you join a social media group, that doesn't need to cost anything, but you can learn about other people's experiences, share your experiences, as long as you're careful about where you're looking for help, because obviously you don't want to be lurking around the forums too much, because there's a lot of reassurance that goes on in the forums and not enough positive recovery journeys. But don't avoid learning about other people's OCD. Face it, look OCD in the eye, show it that you're not afraid of it. But I hope this video has been useful for you in terms of advising that it's extremely useful to interact with other OCD sufferers for many different ways, to help yourself and also to help them. But through helping them, it helps you. Most importantly, though, to have this community, we feel less alone. And that takes away a huge amount of OCD's ammunition and shame that it likes to add. But thank you very much for watching. Bye.